Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why you're alone right now? Not just physically, not just socially, but truly, deeply alone. Most people will tell you it's because you're not trying hard enough, that you need to be more open, more attractive, more available. They'll say you're too picky, too quiet, too intimidating. But here's the truth, no one dares to speak. You're not alone because you're broken. You're not alone because you're unlovable. You're not even alone because you've failed at connection. You're alone because something inside you is awakening. This isn't emptiness. It's initiation. You are being pulled out of the noise, out of the crowd, out of the roles that never fit you. It's uncomfortable, yes. It feels like rejection, yes. But it's not. It's realignment. Because for the first time in your life, your soul is no longer interested in shallow attachments or temporary comfort. It's asking for something more. And here's the part no one teaches you. Before you rise, you'll fall into silence, into stillness, into solitude that rattles everything you once believed. So the question is not, why am I alone? The real question is, what part of me is trying to emerge now that everything else has gone quiet? What if this isn't the end of your story, but the start of your becoming? This silence is not absence. It's space, sacred space. And only in that space can the most powerful version of you be born. Don't look away. Don't rush to fill it. Just stay here with it. Because what's about to come through this stillness might just change your entire life. Have you ever wondered why, even when you're surrounded by people, you still feel invisible? That quiet ache in your chest, that heavy stillness at the end of the day, that strange sense of floating, even when your feet are on the ground. It doesn't make sense on the surface. You might have a job, friends, maybe even someone who claims to love you, and yet you feel hollow. You smile on cue, speak when spoken to, play the roles you've mastered over the years. But inside, there's a silence that keeps growing louder. That silence is not a failure. It's a message. Loneliness, as we've been taught to see it, is supposed to be a sign that something's wrong with us, that we're not likable enough, attractive enough, open enough. But what if it's not lack? What if it's transition? Carl Jung once said, "What we deny in ourselves becomes our fate." And that is the key to understanding this hollow space you're feeling. You're not falling apart. You're shedding. That emptiness inside isn't here to punish you. It's here to make room. Because before we can become who we truly are, everything we are not must fall away. And the first thing to leave is the noise. You begin to hear things you once ignored, the quiet questions that live in the corners of your mind, the doubts you've silenced, the truths you've avoided. You begin to sense that maybe, just maybe, you've built a life around who you were expected to be, not who you are. Loneliness is often the first sign that the masks are slipping. It's not because you're weak. It's because you've stopped distracting yourself long enough to feel what's real. Think about it. The lives we live are filled with templates of success, of relationships, of happiness. You're supposed to chase love, build a career, smile when you're tired, keep going when you're breaking. You're taught to be visible, likable, acceptable. But in the process, you lose the sound of your own voice. And one day, the illusion starts to crack. Maybe it was a relationship that ended, a friendship that faded, a job that no longer fits. Or maybe nothing happened at all. Just a growing distance between you and everything that once made sense. And suddenly you feel alone. But this is where something powerful begins. Not out there, but in here, in you. Because when the external world becomes quiet, the internal world starts to speak. The questions begin. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I want not? What I've been told to want? Why do I feel so far from myself? These are not signs of collapse. They are signs of awakening. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You are learning how to choose. And the choosing begins in solitude. In this space, you don't have to perform. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to be anyone but who you are, raw, uncertain, becoming. This is the soil of selfhood. Dark, quiet, and rich with what's real. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires us to face the shadow, the unconscious, the parts of us we've buried in order to survive. And where do those buried parts come to surface first? In loneliness. In the stillness that follows the unraveling. So if you feel lost right now, if you're wondering what went wrong, pause. Because nothing went wrong. You're simply at the point where the path splits. You can turn back to comfort, to noise, to the familiar masks. Or you can keep walking into yourself. You can begin to trust the ache not as a wound, but as a compass. Yes, it hurts, because the truth always does at first. The truth demands honesty, and honesty strips away what we've built to please the world. But only in that stripping do we discover what was buried beneath it all. And what you'll find is not emptiness, it's clarity. The loneliness isn't about the absence of others. It's about the return of your own presence. It's your soul knocking, asking to be let in. You have not failed. You are not broken. You are simply awakening to the truth of who you are. That truth may not come with applause. It may not be easy to explain to others, but it will feel like oxygen after years of holding your breath. This is the sacred function of loneliness. It breaks the spell. It calls you back. So, if you find yourself alone tonight feeling raw, uncertain, heavy, don't numb it. Don't rush to fix it. Just sit with it. Breathe. Listen, because in the silence, something ancient stirs. And if you're quiet enough, brave enough, still enough, you'll hear it say, "You're not empty. You're becoming." There comes a moment in life when everything begins to feel numb. The music you once loved no longer stirs anything inside you. The people you used to crave now feel distant, as if you are watching them from behind a pane of glass. Laughter feels forced, silence feels heavy, and desire itself seems to have vanished. Not slowly, but all at once, like a door closing quietly in the dark. You might think something is wrong with you. You might call it depression, emptiness, a kind of slow erosion of your inner world. But what if it's not a breakdown? What if it's a recalibration? Carl Jung called this moment the descent into the shadow, a sacred withdrawal of the soul, not a failure, not a collapse, but a turning inward. You are not dying inside. You are preparing for rebirth. In the language of the psyche, this withdrawal is not punishment. It is protection. The soul, overwhelmed by noise, by performance, by shallow stimulation, begins to pull back. It retracts from the surface to tend to what lies beneath. Like an animal retreating to its den, it does so not out of fear, but out of instinct. You are not less alive during this time. You are more alive than ever. You are just no longer available for things that once distracted you from your truth. The desire to be seen, the craving to be needed, the addiction to validation, all of it begins to dissolve. And what remains, at first, is nothingness, a void. But within that void, a quiet intelligence is at work. You may start to dream more vividly. You may sense things others cannot name. You may begin to feel the weight of emotions you didn't know you were carrying. This is the soul-clearing space. You are not disconnected. You are being rewired. You are not apathetic. You are becoming selective with your energy. You are not uninterested. You are unwilling to participate in what no longer resonates with your evolution. This withdrawal is sacred, and in truth, it is often misunderstood, because we live in a world that glorifies energy, movement, urgency. The culture says you must feel something, want something, chase something. But what happens when your system refuses to play along? You're labeled as broken. You're told to fix it, to cheer up, to get back out there. But Jung knew better. He taught that this silence, this internal void, is the necessary condition for transformation. Before anything new can take root, the soil must rest, the field must lie fallow, and so must you. Your soul withdraws not to punish you, but to protect what is sacred within you. During this time, the world may feel unreal. You may move through your days like a ghost in your own life. Conversations feel shallow. Tasks feel meaningless. The old games, no longer entice you. You stop chasing. You stop performing. You stop pretending. And at night, when everything grows quiet, you hear it. Not a voice, not exactly, but a presence, a pulse, a vibration, a sense that something ancient is beginning to stir. This is not depression. This is not failure. This is the soul rearranging your inner architecture. It is tearing down false walls. It is erasing inherited scripts. It is dissolving the masks you've worn for survival. And though it feels like a loss, it is, in truth, a liberation. Loneliness in this context is not about the absence of people. It is the absence of false resonance. You no longer resonate with what once consumed you. You're no longer interested in proving your worth through productivity. You no longer feel drawn to perform intimacy in exchange for acceptance. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not distant, you're reclaiming space. You're not detached, you're becoming immune to manipulation. This retreat of the soul creates a stillness that is almost mystical. Imagine a dark room, no windows, no noise, just you. For the first time, there is nothing pulling at you, nothing demanding you smile or respond or pretend. And in that stillness, something emerges, a flicker, a faint light in the far corner of the room. You don't rush toward it. You don't even fully understand it. But it's there. It pulses. That flicker is your essence, untouched, unspoiled, unshaped by the world. You forgot it existed, but it remembers you. And in this sacred quiet, it begins to draw you in. Not with urgency, but with recognition. You do not chase this light. You follow it with reverence. This is the beginning of integration. You are no longer splitting yourself to please others. You are no longer outsourcing your identity to be seen. You are no longer trading your depth for the illusion of connection. The soul, in its wisdom, has withdrawn from all that was false. And in doing so, it has created a container for what is true. There's a reason spiritual traditions across cultures emphasize silence, solitude, and surrender. Because only in emptiness can the soul finally be heard. This is your temple now, not the outside world, not the roles you've played, but the sacred space within you that was once hidden under noise. And now you're beginning to hear it again. The pulse, the truth, the flicker that leads you home. So if you feel numb, don't rush to feel again. If you feel alone, don't fill the void. If you feel empty, don't panic, because you are not empty. You are full of everything the world tried to bury. And that fullness is beginning to return, quietly, powerfully, on its own terms. Let it. This is not the end of your light. It is the birth of your fire. There's a moment quiet, unassuming, when you realize no one is coming. Not the person who promised. Not the friend who once understood. Not the version of yourself that used to chase comfort in others. And at first, it feels like abandonment. It feels like you've been left behind, as if the world has moved on without you and closed the door quietly behind it. But what if that's not the truth? What if you haven't been left behind at all? What if the universe is clearing the space around you not to punish you, but to reveal something far more sacred? What if the silence isn't evidence of loss, but a divine invitation to meet the one person you've avoided the longest? Yourself. You haven't lost them. You're finding you. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the slow, sometimes painful journey of becoming who you were meant to be before the world told you who you had to become. It doesn't happen in the noise. It doesn't happen when you're surrounded by people feeding your image. It begins when the crowd fades and the performance ends. And suddenly, it's just you and the mirror. And in that mirror, questions begin to surface. Who was I before I began performing for approval? What did I truly desire before I was told what was acceptable? When did I start abandoning myself just to make others feel comfortable? These questions are not easy. They aren't meant to be. They dismantle the roles you've been wearing for years. The good one, the strong one, the pleaser, the fixer, the one who always smiles even when her heart is burning. And one by one, those layers begin to fall away. At first, you panic. You reach for what used to soothe you: text messages, distractions, temporary intimacy, achievements. But nothing satisfies. Because what you're craving is not external. You're craving reunion with your essence. This is the discomfort of rebirth. The tension of meeting yourself beneath all the layers. And it feels foreign. Because so much of your life may have been lived in reflection of others, pleasing them, adapting to them, shrinking for them, hoping they'd love you enough to make up for the parts of yourself you had to sacrifice just to stay. But here, in this stillness, you begin to see. You begin to remember. There was once a version of you who dreamed without permission, who felt deeply, who laughed too loud, who believed love didn't have to mean losing yourself. That version didn't vanish. She's been waiting, quietly, behind every false smile, behind every compromise that felt like betrayal. She's been watching, waiting for the noise to fade, waiting for you to finally turn inward and say, "I miss you." Because when no one else is there, when you stop seeking someone to fill the ache, something remarkable happens. You begin to become someone you can count on. You begin to trust your intuition, again the gut feelings you once dismissed to keep the peace. You begin to make decisions that align with your truth, even if they cost you comfort. You begin to say no not as an act of defiance, but as a declaration of worth. You begin to say yes to rest, to healing, to solitude as a last resort, but as a sacred choice. And slowly the ache begins to change. It no longer signals loneliness. It begins to feel like presence. The empty room becomes sacred. The silence becomes holy. And you stop fearing your own company. Because now, you're no longer trying to fill space. You're learning how to hold it. And in that space, clarity emerges. You realize you haven't been abandoned. You've been invited to return, to rebuild, to redefine every part of your life from a place of truth rather than survival. This is the revolution the world will never celebrate because it's quiet, because it doesn't fit into boxes or hashtags, but it is profound. You are no longer measuring your value by how many people stay. You are beginning to ask a different question. Do I still stay with me? That is the turning point. And once you tasted this self-reunion, you can never go back. You'll never again be able to pretend that half connection satisfies you. You'll never again betray yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. You'll never again mistake being chosen for being seen. Because now you see yourself. You've watched yourself break. You've watched yourself sit in the dark and not look away. You've held your breath through long nights of silence and made it to the other side. You've seen who you are when no one is clapping. And you've begun to love her not because she's perfect, but because she's honest. And from this honesty, a new kind of strength is born. Not the kind that shouts, not the kind that postures, but the kind that stands alone in the quiet and says, "I am still here. I have not lost myself. I am returning not to who I was told to be, but to who I was before the world taught me how to disappear." You're not broken. You're not lost. You're simply shedding what was never truly yours. And what remains, what survives every goodbyes, the one thing that can never be taken from you again. You. There comes a point in the journey when something fundamental shifts. It doesn't happen with noise. It doesn't announce itself. But one day, you wake up and realize you are no longer waiting to be chosen, no longer aching for someone's permission to feel worthy, no longer measuring your value by who texts back, who stays, who loves, or who leaves. Because something inside you has become fuller than anything outside of you could ever offer. You've stopped chasing. Not out of bitterness, but because you finally understand the cost. The cost of bending. The cost of explaining. The cost of dimming your light to be palatable, to be accepted, to be loved in a way that always felt conditional. Now, the hunger is gone. You're not starved for affection. You've tasted something more potent: self-recognition. You've looked into the mirror and seen yourself, not as others framed you, not as a version trimmed and softened for approval, but raw, real, whole. And in that still, quiet clarity, a new power is born. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need applause. But it changes everything. Because when a woman stops needing to be chosen, she becomes ungovernable. She can't be manipulated with the promise of love. She can't be guilted into staying. She can't be baited by silence or absence or withheld affection. She sees through the game now, the delays, the empty gestures, the hot and cold rhythms, designed to keep her hoping. None of it works anymore, not because she's hardened, but because she's awake. Once, she would have waited for a reply, rewritten her boundaries, explained her needs over and over, convinced herself that crumbs were better than nothing. But now, she knows her soul cannot survive on crumbs. She no longer hungers to be seen by someone who can't even see themselves. She doesn't beg for space. She doesn't chase closure. She doesn't audition for love. Because she knows what is real does not require performance. And what she seeks now is not attention, but alignment. Not promises, but presence. Not someone who will save her, but someone who will sit beside her as she saves herself. I no longer need to be saved, she says. I need to be seen, truly seen. Without projection, without expectation, without the need to shrink. But until that is possible, she is willing, no, committed to stand alone. And that is what makes her dangerous to systems built on dependency. Because a woman who is full within herself cannot be bought with fantasy. She doesn't respond to flattery or fear, or the subtle suggestion that she is too much or not enough. She knows what she carries. She knows what it cost her to arrive here, and she will not trade that knowing for comfort. Yes, the old connections fall away, the ones built on validation, on need, on performance. They dissolve not with drama, but with silence. Because when she stops showing up for what doesn't feed her soul, the structures built around her begin to collapse. Not because she is cruel, but because she is no longer available for the roles she once played so well. The peacemaker, the fixer, the mirror, she has laid them down. And in their place, she has become something solid, something whole. Now, she chooses. She chooses who enters her world, not out of loneliness, but from discernment. She does not open her heart easily, but when she does, it is sacred ground, because she no longer offers herself in pieces. She does not seek to be half of anything. She seeks only to overflow beside someone who can meet her depth without fear. And if that connection never comes, she does not wait in lack. She lives in fullness, because the foundation is no longer built on external validation. It is built on self-trust. It is built on the nights she sat alone and didn't numb the ache. It is built on the mornings she rose anyway, quietly choosing herself again and again. This is what makes her free. And that freedom has weight. It changes how she walks into a room, how she speaks, how she refuses to rush, how she carries her silence not as a void, but as presence. You can feel it when she's near. She doesn't have to prove herself. She doesn't compete. She doesn't explain. She simply exists in her existence. There is an undeniable sovereignty. That is the strength born from choosing herself. That is the quiet power of a woman who no longer asks to be chosen. She is the choice, and she knows it. And so now, when the world offers her less than truth, less than reciprocity, less than soul, she does not fight. She simply walks away, not with anger, not with regret, but with grace, because her love is no longer a currency to be bartered. It is a gift to be honored. And if it is not, she keeps it for herself, not out of spite, but out of deep reverence. Because this self-love, this stillness, this unwavering presence is the home she spent a lifetime searching for in others. And now that she's found it within, she will never abandon it again. There is a quiet moment after the storm has passed. Not dramatic, not loud, but unmistakable. The air feels different. The silence is no longer heavy. It's spacious, alive, full of potential. This is what rebirth feels like. You've walked through the ache, you've faced the void, you've watched illusions fall away, relationships dissolve, parts of yourself die. And now, something entirely new is beginning. You are not where you started. The loneliness that once felt like a punishment has become your teacher. The silence that once echoed with doubt now holds peace. You're no longer waiting to be rescued. You're no longer reaching for someone to tell you who you are. Because now, you know. Carl Jung once wrote, "The tree that reaches to heaven must have roots in hell." And that is exactly what this journey has been. You have rooted in the dark. You have faced what most run from. You've sat in the discomfort of not knowing. You've surrendered to stillness. You've let the false fall away, even when it left you raw and trembling. And in doing so, you planted yourself. Deep, stable, real. You are not being buried. You are being rooted. This was never the end. It was preparation. Because from here, something begins to rise. Not out of force, not out of urgency, but from within. You begin to feel it first in small ways. You wake up without dread. You notice beauty again. You hear your own thoughts, and they no longer attack you. You start to laugh not to perform, but because something real inside you is softening. The world doesn't look different, but you do. You've changed the lens. You no longer seek to be understood by everyone. You no longer crave validation from people who cannot meet you. You no longer shrink to fit into conversations, connections, or spaces that feel too small for your truth. And this change is magnetic, because now, you're no longer chasing. You're becoming the presence you always hoped to find in others. Becoming the calm in your own storm, becoming the light you once begged someone else to carry for you. You are no longer in search of alignment. You are alignment. And because of this, something else happens. You begin to attract what feels real, what resonates, what meets you in your depth. The people who show up now don't need your masks. They don't need you to perform. They don't need you to make yourself smaller for their comfort. They meet you where you are because you've dared to live where most won't go. And suddenly, the loneliness that felt unbearable becomes sacred. You see that it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything that truly matters. You weren't lost. You were clearing space. You weren't forgotten. You were being recalibrated. You weren't broken. You were becoming whole. The journey into yourself was never meant to isolate you. It was meant to prepare you, to strip away what was never truly yours, so that you could stand in what has always been waiting: your essence, your light, your voice. Now, you are no longer afraid of your own company. Now, you walk into rooms with presence, not pretense. Now, you trust your timing, your intuition, your silence. And perhaps most importantly, now, you stop searching, because you've become the very thing you were looking for. A beacon, a mirror, a sanctuary. You. And that changes everything. Because when you meet yourself fully, when you come home to your soul, you stop trying to earn your place in anyone's life. You are no longer something to be chosen. You are the one who chooses. You become the frequency others seek, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. This is what rebirth looks like. Not a grand moment of arrival, but a steady unfolding. A rooted peace. A quiet certainty that no matter who comes or goes, you are whole. You are enough. You are ready not to return to who you were, but to live as who you truly are. So let the light in. Let it rise through the cracks. Let it meet you in the places that once felt unworthy. Because the darkness was never here to break you. It was here to show you your own brilliance. And now you rise. Not to prove anything, not to perform, but because you've remembered, the light was always within you. It just needed the silence to grow. If you saw yourself in this journey, even just a little, maybe you're not as lost as you thought. Maybe you're not falling behind. Maybe you're simply beginning the path back to yourself. A path that doesn't rush, that doesn't scream, but one that quietly calls you inward, towards something more honest, more real. If you're in that space, know in the middle of the undoing, in the quiet between who you were and who you're becoming, leave a comment. Not to impress, not to explain, just to say, I'm here too. because this part of the journey can feel like no one understands. But you are not alone. You are part of something unfolding slowly, deliberately, beautifully. And if this message touched something in you, even softly, even in silence, consider staying connected. Follow this space, not for noise, but for more of what speaks, without shouting. Because what's coming next isn't for everyone. It's for those ready to walk deeper. It's for those ready to meet themselves.